Prophecies play a huge part in the Harry Potter series, but specifically one main prophecy. And I'm pretty sure everybody gets it wrong. And let's talk about it. Well, first we'll go over the prophecy. It is, of course, the main chosen one prophecy that Trelawney gives to Dumbledore that ultimately decides that Harry is going to have to deal with Voldemort. And we'll break it. We'll go over the full prophecy, and then we'll talk about each piece by piece. So, the one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches. Born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the seventh month dies. And the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not. And either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord will be born as the seventh month dies. And in the book, it kind of explains the whole thing. You have Dumbledore explaining, well, your parents were enemies of the Dark Lord. So were the Longbottoms. He could have chosen between the two of you, but instead of picking the pureblood, he picked the half-blood, like him. And then we assume the Dark Lord marking him as his equal is giving him the lightning bolt-shaped scar, and the power the Dark Lord knows not is love. All of this makes sense. And we'll go line by line and really break down each of the thing, but just Dumbledore says, yes, Harry, it's love. It's because you can love. Your mother loved you and sacrificed herself, and that is what gives you the power that can defeat the Dark Lord. But one thing you have to remember is Dumbledore lies, and he had an ultimate goal in mind, to make sure that Harry had finished his job before he faced Voldemort, to make sure that Voldemort would fall. There's a lot of little details that are throughout the book that really show that, is that what the prophecy is? And I'll go through the little, but what about moments in the book? So let's start with the first line. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches. That's pretty basic. Someone will show up who can defeat Lord Voldemort. Is that the Dark Lord? Yeah, I guess that's the Dark Lord. It didn't always have to be about Voldemort, but Voldemort made it about himself because that's who he is as a person. Born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the seventh month dies. It's also a pretty basic part of the prophecy, is they will be born at the end of July to parents who have defied Voldemort 3 times. Whether that's defeated him, stopped his plans for, taking over something, or just, Voldemort shows up and goes, I'm gonna kill you, and they go, no you're not, and they disappear. We don't know what the details of thrice defied him mean, but we do know the Longbottoms did it and the Potters did it, which is impressive because both of them were very young when all this happened. I think the Longbottoms were probably in their mid-20s and early to mid-20s because they were both R's. We know it takes a lot of extra learning after school to become an R. And then you had the Potters, who were almost directly out of school because they were 19, 20. At least when this prophecy was given, it was when they were probably 19, almost 20. And also, it is good to point out that Snape only hears the first 2 lines. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches. Born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the seventh month dies. That is all Snape probably hears. He may have heard the next line, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but I feel like that would have probably stopped Voldemort, or at least had him hesitate. There are 5 lines in the prophecy. Snape probably heard the first 2 before he was then caught eavesdropping at the door, and then was dragged in shortly after because it's a very short prophecy. She probably finished and Aberforth was like, hey, what are you doing listening at the door? And he's probably like, I was trying to, and then dragged in right as the prophecy probably ended being talked about. So let's talk about the next line. And the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have the power the Dark Lord knows not. And this is what we're told in the book. The mark for his equal is the scar on his head. Is it, though? The power the Dark Lord knows not is constantly being referred to as the love from Lily's sacrifice. But is it? is it? And then we get into, and the either must die at the hands of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. And this, I think, is what is important, is this line tying back to the previous line, is, and either must die at the hands of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. I think ends up referring to the power the Dark Lord knows not. And this is where it changes things. If you look at it this way, because we know Voldemort cannot die because of the Horcruxes. The Horcruxes fundamentally make him immortal. So how can Harry kill him while he survives? What happens at the end of Deathly Hallows? Voldemort tries to kill Harry. Harry dies, but then immediately comes back to life because of the piece of Horcrux in his tied around his soul, as well as the fact that Voldemort took Harry's blood, which basically tied Harry to Voldemort's Horcruxes. Are we starting to get where I'm going here? And we'll go into more detail. So what makes, if the scar is not what marks Harry as Voldemort's equal, because at that point, Harry was a baby. He was not a magical power. Like, he's not marking him as an equal. He was just going to kill him because Voldemort didn't know that he was going to mark him as an equal. You know when Voldemort marked Harry as an equal? Was when Harry's blood was the only blood good enough for his resurrection. Think about it. Peter Pettigrew goes to Voldemort at the beginning of the 4th book and he goes, "Sir, we can get anybody's blood. You are a lot of people's enemy." And Voldemort goes, "That's not good enough. I need Harry's blood," because Harry has the sacrificial love attached to him. Voldemort knows about the sacrificial love. He knows about that power. And if you're saying, but that's still the power the Dark Lord knows not, because he cannot harness the power. It's not that he actually knows about the power. It's that he just doesn't know the power of love. And it's like, okay, Huey Lewis. Voldemort as a 16-year-old, when he came out of the diary, when Harry goes, "Yeah, you lost to me as a baby because my mother sacrificed herself for me." And he goes, "Ah, old magic. I didn't even think of that." He knew about it. He just didn't think about it. And if that's your argument of why he didn't know about it, that's not what it is. The power the Dark Lord knows not is the fact that Harry is tied to Voldemort's life force. The marking Harry as his equal is taking Harry's blood. Harry's blood is the only blood good enough to run through the Dark Lord's veins. Equal. Only one is equal enough to the Dark Lord. Voldemort takes Harry's blood. At that point, it ties Harry to Voldemort's Horcruxes, because Harry also has part of Voldemort's Horcrux. It's two kind of separate things, but also the same. So as long as Harry is alive, Voldemort cannot die. As long as Voldemort has souls, pieces of his souls, which means as long as Voldemort is alive, Harry cannot die. That is literally what this part of the prophecy is. And either must die at the hands of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. Which means neither can die while the other one is still fully alive and intact, because Voldemort's soul is in Harry. Harry is blood tied to Voldemort. So now both of them are tied to the Horcruxes. So Harry will not die as long as Voldemort has Horcruxes. So it stands to reason, if Nagini had died before Harry went into the forest and Voldemort killed him, Harry may not have come back, but may have, because Voldemort was still alive. But at that point, Harry could kill Voldemort because there were no more Horcruxes left. If Voldemort had double Avada Kedavra him, Harry would have still survived because Nagini was still out there. If Voldemort was able to successfully Avada Kedavra Harry after Nagini's head got chopped off, Harry would have dropped dead. End of story. Which then kind of gets into a problem with Cursed Child, because apparently Cursed Child was Neville got killed, so Harry got killed because Nagini was never destroyed. But Harry couldn't die because that is the power the Dark Lord knows not. Voldemort didn't realize that Harry had a piece of the Horcrux within him, but also the fact that taking Harry's blood then tied Voldemort to Harry, which means Harry could not die as long as Voldemort's Horcruxes were alive, because Harry had a piece of Voldemort's soul within him. Power the Dark Lord knows not is the fact that Harry was able to harness Voldemort's Horcruxes unknowingly. Neither of them knew that about that power except for one. Only one person realized what had happened, and that was Dumbledore. And of course, Dumbledore's gonna be like, yeah, the secret power that you have is love. I'm not gonna tell you the fact that you have a freaking Horcrux in your head, because he keeps that a secret until the very end. When he's pretty sure that Voldemort is about to be defeated, that's when Harry finds out that it's like, hey, listen, you have a piece of Voldemort's soul tied around yours. And the only way for that to be destroyed, because of course Hermione did her work and said, hey, look, living creatures that are tied to Horcruxes or pieces of other people's souls, if they die, the soul dies with them. And you're probably also going to say, but what about the fact that Voldemort had to get a new body when he died? I don't think that's fully what happens when you die if you have a Horcrux. I think you just are anchored to life, and if Voldemort was to be Avada Kedavra, normally he would fall over and then stand back up and be like, oh, what did you do that for? I think the reason he lost his body was because the curse backfired and exploded. It wasn't just a normal like, oh, it backfired and I'm now dead, like it did at the end. It backfired and exploded, and that's what caused him to lose his body. He disintegrated at that point and turned into just a soul, because his soul was tied. He had no body, and that's why he needed to get a body back. That's why Harry was able to get hit with Avada Kedavra and stand back up and go, you gonna try that again, Tom? But that's the thing. The power the Dark Lord knows not is the fact that Harry is tied to Voldemort's Horcruxes. Marking him as his equal is not the scar on his forehead, but the scar on his wrist where the blood was drawn, because only Harry's blood will do for my resurrection. So the power the Dark Lord gave Harry was the fact that Harry was also immortal. Voldemort didn't realize he had made Harry immortal because of the piece of soul within Harry's head, within Harry's soul. And part of why Voldemort failed with all this was because Voldemort didn't know the second half of the prophecy. Voldemort never learned the second half of the prophecy. All he knew was that Harry Potter was the one who was going to defeat him, and he had to figure out how to defeat Harry. And that's the chosen one. That's the piece of the prophecy that everybody knows, is Harry is the one who is born to stop the Dark Lord. But because Voldemort had all this faith in the prophecy, and even Dumbledore says, is Voldemort's blinded by the faith he has in this prophecy. He's going to hunt you down until he defeats you or you defeat him. But he doesn't realize that you have the power to defeat. The only person I think who fully understands the prophecy as it is coming out is the person who is presented the prophecy. So since Dumbledore was presented the prophecy, he's the only one who fully understood what it meant. And I'm not just saying because he heard the whole thing, because Harry doesn't really understand. He assumes that, oh, this is the mark as his equal, and my mother sacrificing herself to protect me is the power the Dark Lord knows. He doesn't realize that until the very end, that is not at all what it meant, and that it meant he was tied to Voldemort because Voldemort took his blood, and he had a piece of Voldemort's soul. As the Super Carlin brothers call it, I think they call it a love crux, but I think it's a little bit more complicated than just, oh, it's because Voldemort has Harry's blood, why he can't die. It's partially because Voldemort has the blood, Harry has the soul of Voldemort, and it's just kind of, they're now bound together in immortality because of the Horcruxes. And then, of course, the last part of the prophecy, the one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord, will be born as the 7th month dies, which is just a rehash, like a summary of it. It's, hey, the chosen one will defeat the Dark Lord. He's being born at the end of July. And that's it. Dumbledore lied about what the actual prophecy meant. And what's new? Dumbledore always lies. So let me know what you think about this theory in the comments down below. Do you think it's bunk? Does it make sense? Did I explain it well enough? Am I crazy? If you like this and like more in-depth details, make sure to check out this video which I posted last week, which is just, 7 details that you missed in the Finding Harry, the Craft Behind the Magic series. And that's it for me today. Make sure to like, subscribe, stay marvelous, and Knox.